Okay, we've got a question today about street preachers.
Yes.
Okay, so street preaching, which I think people probably mean on a college campus, gathering a crowd by preaching in the open air.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that sort of thing in contemporary world, does that help the cause of Christ? Does it hurt the cause of Christ? Do you think that's something we should be doing more of, less of? How do you think about street preaching?
So I think street preaching is great. I've done it myself. And I think everything depends on whether the preacher is good or not.
Okay.
So honestly, it's like the question is like, what do I think of preachers in church?
Uh-huh.
Well, who?
Yeah.
Who? Some preachers preach like a flat brainwave. Other preachers are obnoxious, rude, cantankerous. I saw there was one street preacher, Brother Jed, many years ago.
No, I remember Brother Jed.
Yeah, he came up to U of I a few times, and calling women whores as they walk by and everything.
Yeah.
So we went up, and I went up there to heckle him.
Uh-huh.
So that was the odd. So there was an odd situation with a street preacher heckling a street preacher, and opening up opportunities for the gospel there. Okay. Then there was another time when Nancy and I were in St. Andrews, Scotland, and there was a street preacher there in St. Andrews, and I stopped to listen to him for a while, and I think there were a couple of ladies there with him who had sung the song to begin, and he was like an old school street preacher. And he was preaching, and I listened to him for a bit, and he was quite good. It was good gospel, but as far as the crowd was concerned, people coming, going all the place, as far as everybody was concerned, he could have been a parking meter. I've never seen anybody so absolutely ignored. So his venture out there was irrelevant. It was not, if I were on his board, I would say we need to reimagine this. Something needs to change because this is not doing it. And right down the street is where St. Andrew's Cathedral was, where John Knox preached. And it was just amazing, the contrast between the stir that John Knox caused when he announced he was going to come preach to St. Andrews, and how totally ignored this guy was. And then there are other street preachers who are engaging, funny, checked out. They do a really good job. They're effective, and I'm entirely in their corner. So the really good street preachers, I think, do a lot of good. I think the okay street preachers who are ignored don't do any harm. At the most, it's a testimony. It's a testimony against the people who shouldn't be walking by.
Right.
And then the bad street preachers, either obnoxious and sinful ones or just the maladroit ones, should just stay home.
I remember, this is 25 years ago or so, but street preachers coming to our college. I think either Brother Jed or some of his compatriots, because I know the name, came, and they were able to draw a crowd back then. Do you think that is it a contextual thing in terms of so Scotland, how much of it was it his problem versus this is just culturally nobody does this anymore. Nobody has a bucket for it.
Right.
As opposed to, I think of something like what Charlie Kirk does, where he goes, sets up a table, and it's not necessarily a gospel thing first. It's much more whatever provocative cultural commentary kinds of stuff. Do you think if you were trying to talk to a street preacher or somebody who wanted to do something like that, would you tell them, pick the cultural hot buttons, the things that are going to get everybody's attention, start there, get them to the gospel, but use that as a way in? Is that a good tactic?
Yeah, I think it's a good tactic. And the guy in St. Andrews who's being ignored, if I were on his board and I said, let's reinvent this, it's not, you don't reinvent the gospel.
Right.
But these people might be ignoring us because this is old school. This is something from the 1920s, and people just don't do that anymore. But if someone is engaging and good, I think generally people are people, and they're going to be able to draw a crowd. One time, many years ago, I went over to WSU to do some open air preaching on outside the Cub there, the Compton Union Building. And when I got there, it was overcast and drizzling. And when you preach in church, everybody who comes to hear you preach came expecting to hear you preach. That was on their agenda. Okay. But when people are hanging out at a college campus, nobody came there to hear you preach. Mm-hmm. And so it's always a little bit like going off the high dive. Right? It's more significant than when you're preaching at a meeting or a church. And I got over there, and it was drizzling and overcast, and I thought, I'm not going to be able to get a crowd. This is not a good day for it. And I went back and forth in my mind and said, well, I drove over here. I might as well. So I got up and started to preach, and within seconds, there was this Maoist, a commie, mm-hmm. who was selling Maoist newspapers, mm-hmm. who jumped up and started to shout me down. Mm-hmm. And so, whoom, instantly a crowd. Whoom.
Okay. Yeah.
And thank you very much.
Is it lawful for you to arrange that sort of thing? Maybe not, but if you had a group of people, three or four, all right, you got one guy who's going to be the main preacher. Yeah. Can you have some of your friends, come out with you and stand there so that there's already a sort of ready-made crowd? At least some people, they don't know that they're with you, but they're there. Is it okay to have that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think there's a fine line there, because like in the Billy Graham Crusades, they used to have counselors go forward when they gave the invitation. Yeah. All the counselors go forward.
Prime the pump
and get, break the ice, and people start going forward because monkey see, monkey do. Uh-huh. And is that Holy Spirit, or is that psychological pressure? And is it deception? Are you violating the 9th commandment? So you don't want to resort to trickery, because Paul says in Thessalonians that we didn't use trickery when so you don't want to do trickery. But we did a variation of that. Toby Sumter and I went up to preach at the U of I campus, and we went up together, and one of us would preach and the other would heckle.
Okay.
But it was very clear that it was a staged heckling.
Okay.
Right. It was not. It was not. It was not like we were pretending to be in the crowd.
He didn't put on a wig and get dark glasses. Dark glasses is commie literature.
No, it was heckling, and then when you see a Christian articulating the objections that non-Christians would raise, well, that was a pretty good. Yeah, they understand. I think it's a good thing.
So that sort of thing where you actually have somebody who's going to say what you want said so that you can say what you want said.
Right.
As a way of getting things started, as long as it's obvious that this is a tag team.
It's not trickery.
Right.
And we did both ways. Toby would preach and I would heckle, and I would preach and he would heckle.
Last part on this. How valuable do you think it is for ministers to do this? So it's one thing to say, is it effective on the, as a fruit, but it seems like, you said it's like jumping off the high dive. I remember I never did open air preaching in college, but just campus evangelism, sort of cold turkey sort of stuff where you just walk up and say, hey, can I talk to you for a sec? Did seem like it was a value. Even, I don't know that I was ever any good at it. And I don't know how effective it was, but for me, it was I'm going to do it. Yeah. And there was a faith building dimension. Do you think that's true of street preaching for pastors?
Yeah, faith building and also skills building. Paul tells Timothy to do the work of an evangelist. I don't think that Timothy had the gift of evangelism.
Okay.
But he's still called to do the work of it.
Yeah.
Some people are just gifted that way. My dad was a gifted evangelist, and we've got all kinds of stories of he just had a gift, and he thought everybody ought to be able to do that. We used to make fun of him. Dad, when you go to heaven, you're going to be disconsolate because everybody's saved. Nobody. So he was gifted that way. I don't think Timothy was gifted that way, but he's still instructed to do the work of an evangelist.
Okay.
And it's good. Basically, I think it keeps your skills sharp. It's good for. It's good to be heckled. It's good to have interaction where you don't know what the next question is going to be.
Build up some immunity to shaming,
correct,
mockery, things like that.
Right, and it helps you when you're having a meeting with your high school kids in the church, and they're throwing questions at you. Well, you've been here before.
Very good.